Next, we will look into the meaning of philosophy. Stand up. Turn up, left and right. Turn left and right. Very good. Okay, ትንሽ ነው የቀረን። ቁጭ በሉ አላችሁበት። Meaning of philosophy. Defining the objective of this particular section is to define the term philosophy and explore its etymology, examine various definitions and interpretation of philosophy from different philosophical traditions, and to reflect on the evolving nature of philosophy. We have already tried to say something about what philosophy. The word philosophy is ascribed to Pythagoras. Philosophy, phil means love. Sophie means wisdom, love of wisdom, ascribed to Pythagoras some 600 before the birth of Christ. But as an organized discipline, it started by the Milesian. And throughout history, philosophy has evolved and branched into different schools of thought and traditions, including ancient Greek philosophy, medieval philosophy, and modern philosophy. It has encompassed a wide range of topics, including ethics, metaphysics, epistemology, logic, aesthetics, social and political philosophy, and philosophy of mind, and philosophy of science, among others. Philosophy of mind and philosophy of science is more recent branches of philosophy, and whereas logic, aesthetics, epistemology, and metaphysics are more ancient branches of philosophy, continues to be vibrant and dynamic discipline, exploring fundamental questions about the nature of reality. Now, in order to have a more comprehensive and more complete understanding of the definition of philosophy, we need to approach it from the Western perspective and from Eastern perspective. What is philosophy from the Western perspective? From Western perspective, philosophy is love of wisdom, rational inquiry, systematic study of fundamental questions. Underline that word, fundamental questions. Fundamental questions are questions that relate to reality, existence, God, immortality, soul, are known as fundamental questions. Questions concerned with addressing fundamental questions underlying various areas of human knowledge, rational inquiry rather than meteorological, religious, or illogical explanation, love of wisdom, metaphysical speculations. Western approach to understanding of philosophy also give emphasis to metaphysical speculations, but metaphysical speculation of the nature of philosophy is more emphasized by the Eastern approach. Ethical inquiry, ethics is a central branch of philosophy that undermines the question of morality, values, and human conduct, critical analysis of concept and belief, dialogue, and discourse. From Eastern philosophical tradition, philosophy is portrayed as an activity of what? Contemplation, meditation, and self-realization. Eastern tradition emphasized on meditation, contemplation, rather than dialogue, discourse, or rationalization, or argumentation. The Eastern philosophical tradition emphasized on meditative aspect of philosophy. Buddhism, Hinduism, Confucianism is Eastern philosophical tradition that emphasized on the role of contemplation and meditation as the basic element or feature of philosophy, right? Hinduism emphasized on the role of contemplation to understand the nature of reality. Buddhism, the role of contemplation or meditation to understand the nature of suffering. The word suffering is associated with Buddhism. And whereas the word seeing or perceiving is associated with Hinduism school of thought, both of them are originated in the continent of India. But they share something in common. but they differ on the object of inquiry. Object of inquiry for Buddhism is clarification of the concept of suffering, source of suffering, and the way to end that particular suffering. And whereas in Hindu philosophy, the emphasis is to use contemplative and meditative tools in an attempt to grasp the nature of reality, in an attempt to see or to perceive the nature of reality, right? But both emphasized on the role of meditation and contemplation. The same thing is true for Confucian philosophy, the emphasis on cultivation of moral virtues or pursuit of moral excellence, right? Unlike the Western perspective of the definition of philosophy, Eastern philosophical traditions more of concerned with the ethical, contemplative, meditative aspect of philosophy. Taoism, same thing is true here, but the emphasis is more on living in accordance with natural laws, living harmoniously with natural flow of things. The emphasis is more on detaching oneself from the material world and emphasized on the contemplative aspect of life, right? This does not mean that they are emphasized on inaction, but they follow on following the natural order, right? Inaction, not doing something, but our action must be in accordance with the natural flow of the world, right? Zen philosophy is Chinese philosophy. It's a sub-branch of Hinduism, but developed in China, right? It emphasized on meditation, just like Hinduism, but it is further developed and expanded in China, and they emphasized on meditation and the practice of fully present in the moment, emphasized the mindfulness, meditation and contemplation and self-realization at the emphasis of Eastern tradition of philosophy. Jainism emphasized on non-violence, truthfulness, non-attachment, liberation of the soul from the cycle of birth and death. So they all share in common that philosophy is characterized by a kind of detachment or separation from the natural world and engaging oneself in meditative or contemplative aspect of inquiry to understand the nature of reality, right? Whereas the Western is characterized by rationalization, dialogue, discourse, conceptual clarification, or etc., right? That you need to understand the nature of philosophy from the Western and from the Eastern aspect, right? Philosophy is still evolving discipline. Philosophy is expanding its subject matter rather than what has already been there in ancient philosophy. Philosophy has been confined to three major traditional subjects such as metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. Now it's expanding its subject matter to areas such as philosophy of mind and philosophy of science and philosophy of consciousness or philosophy of psychology or etc. Right? New subject matter are introduced more recent. Subject matter integration of interdisciplinary approach. Philosophy has increasingly embraced interdisciplinary approach, engaging with other fields, psychology, neuroscience, linguistics, sociology, anthropology. Philosophy is still engaging with social and political issues, has become more engaged with social and political issues, addressing issue of justice, equality, human rights, and social ethics. Revaluation of traditional perspective, integration of global perspective. Philosophy has previously been confined to the Western Hemisphere, but in contemporary time, philosophy tended to inculcate or integrate African philosophy and Asian philosophy. Non-Western philosophical tradition are receiving more attention and recognition in its contemporary period, and philosophy is enriching the global philosophical discourse and promoting a more inclusive, diverse understanding of philosophical ideas, engaging with emerging technologies, ethical aspects of genetic engineering or artificial intelligence and virtual realities are becoming the subject of inquiry in contemporary philosophical discourse. dialogue and collaborations. Philosophical inquiries emphasize dialogue and collaboration among philosophers, right? This is the contemporary aspect of philosophy other than the traditional one. Metaphysics, epistemology, and axiology seems to be the more traditional, and whereas this one is more contemporary aspect, right? Nature of philosophy. What makes philosophy different from other empirical sciences? This particular section is aimed at exploring the fundamental nature, characteristic feature of philosophy as a discipline, to discuss methods approach used in philosophical inquiry, examine the role of reason, critical thinking, logical argumentation in philosophy, consider the relation between philosophy and empirical sciences. Just like computer is for computation or microscope is for biology, reason is for philosophy. Reason is a tool or an arsenal for philosophy, for logical analysis, clarity and coherence, problem solving, rational evaluation, conceptual analysis, thought experiment, rational justification, meta-level reflection. Philosophers use reason as their equipment, as their tool. Right? Thought experiment or etc., right? Philosophy is different from other empirical science in its methodology, in its subject matter, and in its scope of inquiry. What the method in empirical science is known as scientific method, and whereas method in philosophy is what? Anything goes. There is no hard and fast method, predefined method in philosophy. Philosophy, empirical science rely on scientific method, which such as hypothesis, assumptions, verifications, or problem of statements, or etc., right? But in philosophy, there is no such things as called method. Philosophy, on the other hand, employs methods such as logical analysis, conceptual clarification, rational argumentation. But in philosophy, there is no predefined method, predefined hard and fast rules, rigid rules to be abided by in philosophical investigations, right? Even though philosophers tend to use logical analysis, but they may not be rigidly confine themselves to those methods. Subject matter of philosophy, empirical science, focus on studying natural world, its phenomena. They seek to explain the predictable observable phenomena through empirical evidence. Philosophy, on the other hand, addresses broader range of questions that may not be directly testable through empirical methods. It examines consciousness, morality, free will, and the nature of reality. Empirical science is with observable world, whereas philosophy is with an observable, intangible world. Consciousness, morality, free will, and the nature of reality. Scope of inquiry. Empirical science have narrower scope. Philosophy has broader scope. Broader scope because it concerns with foundational questions such as the question of existence, knowledge, and morality. Verifiability and falsifiability. Philosophy is not concerned with observable or verifiable phenomena. Science theories are tested against empirical evidence and subject to revision and rejection based on new data. On the other hand, philosophy, on the other hand, deals with questions that may not be subject to direct empirical verification or falsifications, right? Philosophy is normative or descriptive? Philosophy is normative. What does that mean? It concerns with question of what ought to be the case rather than what is the case. Descriptive science concerns with what is the case, and whereas philosophical investigation deals with what ought to be the case. What is the case and what ought to be the case are entirely two different questions, right? Historical traditions, philosophers, questions in philosophy are something timeless. Historically, question which has been asked by the ancient, medieval, and modern philosophers are still continue to be asked in the present day. Whereas in empirical science, questions are more contemporary and more timely, more recent. empirical science are not concerned with ancient questions, right? Philosophy is not interested in answering questions, but clarifying, dividing, and expounding those questions. Even though philosophy cannot offer answers, it can contribute to the development of questions. How? How? Even though philosophy cannot offer answers to those questions, but it can contribute to the development of those questions. How? If philosophy cannot answer, how development is possible? Empirical science can offer answer. There is a clear linear development in their field, but in philosophy we cannot perceive a kind of clear linear development because it cannot offer clear-cut answers to those questions. We are interested in the question rather than in the answer. In philosophy, we are interested in the question posed rather than in the answer offered. Why? Why philosophy is considered to be contributing to the development of philosophical inquiry, even though it cannot offer answer? Because clarifying the question itself, approaching the question itself in another perspective is considered to be the development itself. In philosophy, even though you cannot offer the same question, approaching, clarifying, studying, evaluating the same question that Plato and Aristotle used to ask is the kind of development that is supposed to be existent in philosophical inquiry, right? If it cannot offer answer, it can clarify the concepts and questions. Clarification of concept and question itself is considered to be development in philosophy. Philosophy has a rich historical traditions, right? Right? It's more of historical in its nature. The questions are more of historical in its nature. They are timeless in their nature. Branches of philosophy introduce and describe the main branches and fields of philosophy, such as metaphysical, epistemology, ethics, logic, aesthetics, and political philosophy. To provide a brief overview of each branch, including central questions and area of inquiry, to highlight the interconnection and overlap between different branches of philosophy, and to discuss significance and relevance of each branch, and understand the conditions. Metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, logic are old branches of philosophy, whereas political philosophy and philosophy of mind and philosophy of science are considered to be more recent branches of philosophy. What is the concern and constants of metaphysics? Metaphysics is derived from what? Two words, meta and physics. Meta refers to what? Metaphysics, meta-ethics, meta-narratives. You can find the word meta in different phraseologies. What's the word meta? Physics means nature, right? Meta means after. Your name? What's it? Lul what? Father. After or beyond. Very good. Lul. After or beyond. So metaphysics means after or beyond physics, after or beyond nature. What are those things that lies beyond or after nature? That's the subject of our argument. What are those things that lies beyond nature? Beyond our perception. That's the subject of our argument, the subject of our thinking. We can think about their existence or non-existence, but we cannot perceive them. Issues such as what? Mind-body. Mind-body questions. The relation between mind and body. Mind-body. Free will. God. Soul. metaphysical entities. We cannot perceive them, but we can construct argument about their existence or their non-existence. We can think about, we can speculate about them. Right? Beyond nature. Nature of existence, reality, ultimate nature of things, it's a metaphysical inquiry, free will, mind, body. Epistemology, concerned with nature of knowledge, belief and justification, questions such as what's knowledge, how it's acquired, what's the nature of truth, how do we differentiate between justified belief and opinion, are there limits to what we know, ethics, morality, values, how we ought to live, questions such as what's the nature of morality, how do we determine what's morality, right or wrong, are moral values objective or subjective. Logic, the principle of valid reasoning and argumentation. It's one of ancient branch of philosophy, right? One of the ancient branch of philosophy focused with principle of valid reasoning and sound argumentation. What makes an argument valid? What are the rules of logical reasoning? How can we evaluate validity and coherence of an argument? Questions asked in logic. Aesthetics, beauty, art, aesthetic experience. What's art? What makes something beautiful? How do we evaluate, interpret artistic works? What is the relation between aesthetics and ethics? Political philosophy, governance, power, social organizations. What is the ideal form of government? What are the rights and responsibility of individuals within a society? How should resources be distributed in a just society? What is nature and extent of political philosophy? Philosophy of mind is supposed to be more recent as compared to the previous one. It's concerned with the nature of consciousness, mental states, our thoughts, perceptions, feeling. Are they the product of our physical material brain or something which exists in themselves? It's a kind of metaphysical questions. Can machines or computers possess consciousness? Are mental states reducible to physical states? What's the relation between mind and brain? Our mind, is it influenced by our brain? Our conscious experience, self-awareness, or personal identity determined by our neurotic activity, or etc., is a kind of question that philosophy of mind trying to address, right? And they're the product of our physical body or something that exists independent of our body, right? Philosophy of mind, philosophy of science, method in science, nature, method, limit of scientific inquiry, what is scientific knowledge and how it is different from other form of knowledge. What is scientific method? How do scientific theories develop and evolve? What are the philosophical implications of scientific discoveries, etc., etc. The last section of this particular chapter is concerned with the importance or relevance of the study of philosophy. Stephen Hawking. Do you know Stephen Hawking? Theoretical physicist, maintains that philosophy is dead. Philosophy is dead in contemporary technological period. He boldly asserts that philosophy is dead. Because he didn't take into consideration the value of philosophy in contemporary emerging issues. Because he didn't take into account the role of philosophy to our personal growth and the role of philosophy in our societal context. What's the role, relevance of philosophy to our personal growth? What does philosophy contribute to our personal well-being, the study of philosophy? Nowadays, there is more emphasis on what? On technical issues, on technical knowledge issues. Ethical, philosophical issues tend to be neglected. That's why Stephen Hawking once maintained that philosophy is dead. Contemporary societies are more focusing on how-to questions. What ought to be, the question of what ought, what should, or etc. is something neglected or given less emphasis. That's why philosophy is dead, right? But in spite of the neglect of philosophy, there is still a role that philosophy can play in contemporary period. Developing critical thinking, examining personal values and ethics, cultivating self-awareness, finding meaning and purpose, navigating moral dilemmas, appreciating diverse perspective. Philosophies expose us to a wide range of ideas and perspectives from different cultures in timeless period. This exposition can cultivate open-mindedness, tolerance, enabling us to appreciate diverse viewpoints. Navigate moral dilemmas. Life often presents with complex moral dilemmas where there is no clear-cut answers. Philosophy equips us with tools to analyze and navigate these dilemmas. Ethical theories such as utilitarianism, deontology, virtue ethics. It will expose us to various constellations of moral framework. It will expose us to various collection of moral frameworks that will enable us to navigate, to evaluate moral contradictions, moral dilemmas, finding meaning and purpose, to reflect, to think about the fundamental assumptions on which our belief system lies, right? Cultivating self-awareness, examining personal values, developing critical thinking. In societal context, philosophy plays an important role in examining the role of philosophy, critiquing existing system, considering alternative philosophical framework, to reflect on the foundation upon which social, cultural, economic assumptions lies, and the basis in which they lies, and to critique the existing system and to consider alternative assumptions or basis on which those foundations lies. Ethical considerations, social contract theory, cultural critics are among other things that philosophy are supposed to contribute to our well-being, to our societal framework, right? You can find more on the nature, meaning, relevance branch of philosophy. If you want to read more about, you can find them freely, those textbook from bookfee.org or from bookz.org, right? You can easily download them, right? They are easily accessible in online portals. Bookfee.org or bookz.org. They are online ebook databases. You can find websites related to the relevance, different aspects of philosophy, meaning of philosophy, or the evolving, the emerging nature of philosophy. For example, the websites such as plato.stanford.edu is an authoritative online encyclopedia that covers a wide range of philosophical topics, including historical context, key philosophical philosophers, philosophical questions, or IEP, Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, another important online resource that offers articles on various philosophical topics. Philosophypage.com, a website that provides concise explanation and summaries of key philosophical concepts or history of philosophy. Podcast, collection of videos and audios, website that offers an accessible and chronological exploration of the history of philosophy, including contribution of, more specifically, to know more about pre-Socratic philosophers, earliest philosophers. This website is highly recommended, or you can search on youtube.com/crash course, very brief videos about pre-Socratic philosophers, or etc., right? That provides an engaging, informative videos on ancient philosophies, philosophytalk.org, radio show, podcasts that explore the various philosophical topics, including relation between philosophy and other disciplines, etc., right? What is the relation between empirical science and philosophy? Philosophynow.org, philosophyforum.com, a website that will help you to expand your horizon, your understanding of the nature, meaning, relevance, or interdisciplinary nature of philosophy, right?